So this is Mel Express Radio. I have with me famed photographer, Jeremy Saffer. How you doing, man?
Great. Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, thank you. October 30th, your new photography book, along with a soundtrack titled Daughters of Darkness, will be released. What can you tell fans about the book and the soundtrack?
A lot. It's been a 12-year process photographing it. It went on much longer than I expected, and it became bigger than I expected, but it's finally coming out. The book, the project kind of started as a fine art nude black metal project, and it was going to be something small like, a set of photos or a grouping of photos turned into a calendar, and then after that I wanted to do a book with it. And for the past 12 years I've shot for it, and then the last 2 years I kind of took off from shooting with it and trying to get it put out and get it published. And there's a lot of people saying no, you get the record labels that I reached out to that do books, they're like, nah, this is nude, we can't do anything with that, it's the Me Too era, no, we're not touching it. And then I would reach out to book publishers who do fine art nude books, and they're like, nah, it's black metal, it's creepy, it's, something that's too niche for us, no one will want it, no one will buy it. And then I found the right publisher through Rarebird, who are amazing people and, fans of black metal, fans of what this project is, what it means. And luckily I have a really good relationship with Season of Mist from being a photographer working with their bands. So when it came time to putting the book together, I reached out to Season of Mist and asked if they would be interested in having Rarebird put together a, kind of a soundtrack on vinyl of, kind of a comp of their black metal bands. And, I kind of assumed they would be like, okay, cool, here's our, most current releases and the singles from those releases, which would have been awesome. But even better, they're like, here's the keys to our archive. Pick what bands you want, pick what songs you want. So I got to go in and pick a lot of my favorite bands, so many of my favorite songs by my favorite bands. Like, unconventionally, I like Mayhem's Grand Declaration of War. I love Maniac as a vocal, so I picked that song rather than doing, something older or something newer. Avith, Count the Dead is one of the best songs he's done with his solo stuff. So the soundtrack's great. It kind of goes well with the book. You can kind of spin it while reading the book, while looking at the book. But yeah, it's finally coming out, which is great for all the models who shot for it over the last 12 years. They've been waiting so long for this to happen. Those photos have been on hold, kind of just sitting there while these models were waiting for them to kind of finally come out, and now they can finally share the images, be proud of it. So it's kind of like a victory for myself as well as the models, and it's as much theirs as it is mine. Every model did their own corpse paint, and they're all fans of black metal, so they're just as pumped as I am for this to finally come out.
And obviously you've been doing photography for years, and I know that you've put up books previously with your work. Is this the first time you've ever paired a soundtrack with your photography?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the first time I've been published not by myself. I've done 2 books in the past. Bring the Noise, which was a music photography book I put out in 2009, self-published, and Till Death, which was kind of a horror comedy, Addams Family kind of jokey book I did with Ash from New Year's Day and Chris DK from Dead Star Assembly, which I also self-published. So this is my first time working with a publisher, which was an amazing experience. As I mentioned, I had a really hard time finding a publisher who understood the project or was into it. I had done a photo shoot for Necrogoblicon, who are an amazing metal band, and the idea was the Goblin was putting out a self-help book, which is so funny and so great, and Rarebird was the publisher. And so I reached out to them, and I was like, hey, I have this project I've been doing for 12 years. I know we just finished this, but would you be interested? And instead of them, hey, we're going to think about it, we'll get back to you in a couple months, they were like, yep, let's do this. Immediately we're into it. And then the first meeting I had with the owner, Tyson, I walk in and he's wearing a Satyricon hoodie, and we end up talking about black metal for like an hour or two before we even talk about, details of the book. It's like, okay, perfect, I found the right publisher. In the past, I've never had a soundtrack attached to a book or anything like that. Rarebird is a really cool publisher in that they usually have their books come with vinyl, but their vinyl is normally the author reading a chapter. Like the John Goblikon book comes with John Goblikon reading a chapter kind of thing. I know the new Rammstein book has the author, Fluke. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm bad with that, sorry. He's reading a chapter, on one side it's German, on the other side it's English, which is really cool. And then I had the idea of doing vinyl, but I think like having, myself, Randy from Lamb of God, or Dani Filth reading a chapter when there's no words, or, they could read their intro, I guess, just didn't make sense to do something like that. So doing a music comp made sense, and being that this is a black metal book that's inspired by, bands like Immortal, Watain, Char Gangren, 1349. It's awesome to have those bands on the soundtrack, which is, it's not necessarily a soundtrack to the book, it's just kind of a companion piece, but there's no question, like, spinning that record while looking at the book is the correct atmosphere and the right way to go about it, for sure.
How was it working with Randy Blythe of Lamb of God and Dani Filth of Cradle Filth for the book?
Randy has been a long time supporter of this project. He's known about it since its inception. Randy, as you know, is also a photographer. If you don't know, he's also an amazing photographer. He's actually getting me into Leica cameras right now, so I'm switching from Canon to Leica because of his positivity towards Leica. So when he was first getting into photography, he would always hit me up, hey, so I'm having trouble with this, or how do I get this kind of look, or what do I do for an f-stop, what do I do for a shutter speed? Let me check out this lens, let me check out that lens. We would always nerd out about photography, show each other like what we've been working on, new photos, different editing techniques, different Lightroom techniques and stuff like that. And I remember showing him the corpse paint project very, very early on. Like, hey, so I did this, clothing line photo shoot, but it turned into a project, check it out. And then every single time we spoke from that point on, it was like, yo, when's the book coming out? Yo, when's the book coming out? Knowing that I didn't have a publisher, knowing that I was still shooting it, but it was a very, supportive, nudging me along, like, I back this project, it's awesome, keep going kind of positivity to have, which is great. He's such a great dude. So when it came time to have someone write it forward, there was no question, Randy is the dude to do it. And then with Dani Filth, Cradle of Filth was such a major inspiration for this project, whereas, like, this goes back to when I was a kid and I would go to my local record store, which, Music Outlet in Enfield, Connecticut. I would, kind of flip through the records, flip through the CDs, and when I was first getting into black metal, I knew Cradle of Filth, I knew Immortal, I knew Satyricon, I knew Darkthrone, I knew Immortal. I probably said that twice, sorry. And I didn't really know too many of the underground bands, but then I'd come across, like, a really cool cover, see the logo, see the cover, see the artwork, and just buy it based on that, not knowing the band. And, 9 times out of 10, it was like a Thyrane, a Tristania, a Gorgoroth, a Cold, a Gehenna, something really cool that I'd be into. And I would always love Cradle of Filth merch, Cradle of Filth imagery, where they would always push to the limits. They would always have, nude models, fine art nude stuff, as would, Tristania, The Sins of Thy Beloved, Theater of Tragedy, and all those bands are so awesome. So this kind of goes back to that as well. So having Dani, whose merch and artwork really, really inspired a lot of what this book is, having him involved is just the coolest thing ever.
Was there any particular band that came to mind right away when you knew that you were going to be making a soundtrack for the book that you wanted to be featured?
When the soundtrack came together, I didn't know what I would have access to.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what bands I would be allowed to use. I didn't know what I would have. And I did have a very specific list in that, I could only work with the bands on that label that they would allow me to have on the soundtrack. But I was able to pick kind of the dream soundtrack for it. Like, you have Mayhem, you have Char Gangren, Abbott, Watain, you have Gall on it, you have Rotting Christ, 1349. It couldn't be more perfect. And there's so many black metal bands out there that not a lot of people really know about, like band Oceans, who are finally back together, which is awesome, and they're on the soundtrack, which rules. And then I got to pick some of my favorite kind of newer bands, like Hellfro, who just put out an album, I think, this year or last year, and it's so good. Great black metal. And, the great old ones who are just amazing. So it was great getting to put that together and choose those bands. I mean, if I could, I'm sure I would have, Immortal, Cradle, Filth, Dimmu Borgir, Emperor, Old Man's Child, Satyricon, but I had to stick with, what I could actually get, which was All Season of Myth. But I'm very, very happy at what we have on it.
And also recently you've been working under Oracle Management, which is ran by Devil Drivers frontman Dez along with his wife. How has that been going for you?
Great. Talking to Dez is like having an adrenaline needle shoved into your heart and just pumped constantly. Like, he has so much energy, enthusiasm, and positivity and so many great ideas. He's such a great dude, and his wife Anastasia is the best. She's always so caring, and so, making sure I'm taking care of all the things we want to do are getting done. They are great at facilitating everything. And, it rules being under the same banner as so many of the people I work with. Like, Cradle of Filth, Wednesday 13, Raven Black. At one time they had Static X, a band I work with a lot. So it's awesome getting to talk to him, fairly consistently, and just having those bursts of energy shoved into your life, and you're just like, all right, let's go, let's do this, let's get this done. He's such a great guy, and it's awesome to have them on my side and working with them.
And while Daughters of Darkness, of course, primarily is paired with black metal for the soundtrack, have you ever thought about down the road you might maybe make another book paired with like a thrash metal soundtrack or something else within the genre?
I had an idea a long time ago for a book, but it's been done. I wanted to do a book of like battle vests, metal vests with all the patches on them.
Oh, that's awesome.
But that had been done, and it's such a good book. It's already been done, and it's so great, and I think that is more conducive to thrash metal, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did that book, I would say, okay, it makes sense to do a thrash metal soundtrack to this. Whereas Daughters of Darkness, corpse paint, black metal poses, it's very, very much black metal. So I stuck with that genre. The next thing I really want to work on is not a follow-up to Daughters of Darkness, but a new band photography book. And that would be every genre, because I shoot all types of bands. I shoot pop punk, I shoot metal, I shoot every subgenre of metal. So we could definitely do something more with more variety there. My favorite's obviously metal, and my favorite subgenre is black metal, so I'm always going to be kind of, have that affinity and push for black metal over anything else. But, I'm definitely open to doing whatever I can possibly do.
So right now, if there's nothing that we've gone over that you would like to throw in, go right ahead.
Not really. I'm just really excited for this to come out and for people to actually see it. The book is insane. It started off as an idea to be like an 8x10 size book with 144 pages, and we made the size so much bigger. It's 14 and a half by 9 and a half, something like that. It's massive, and it's 288 pages. It's like a 5 or 6 pound book, which is crazy. When you look at the quality of this, and you're like, holy shit, this is like a $100 looking book, and it's actually like $60 in stores and online. It's insane. It's almost the same size as the True Norwegian Black Metal book, which one of my favorite books, amazing photographer. It's as tall, but not as wide, because I shoot 8x12 rather than 8x10. But yeah, it's just a massive book. And then the box set version, which is the one that was hand sewn and hand put together, has those extra 24 pages. It's like 6 or 7 pounds, and with the slipcase, it's just huge. It's like the size of my entire torso. It's awesome. So I'm really excited for this, for people to not just see digital photos. I think photos are meant to be seen in print. That's why I do a print series. That's why I'm very print oriented. That's why I shoot for print. I don't think photos should just be seen on the screen. So I'm really excited for these photos, which have only been seen on the screen until now, to be seen as physical media in the hands of the people who want to see it. I'm pumped for people to see it.
So my last question I have for you, if you could create a big four of black metal, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a great question. Dang, that's tough. Well, for me, Immortal's my favorite band. I would put Immortal at number one, but I don't know that they would be in the big four. I think, well, maybe they would. I would say Mayhem would probably be the Metallica of the big four in terms of their, infamy. Dang, I would say Dark Throne would be up there for sure. But, they don't play live shows. So I would say if there was an actual current concert, big four black metal bands that exist right now, I would say Mayhem, Immortal, Emperor, Satyricon. That's what I think it would be. And not necessarily in that exact order, but Mayhem would be at the top for sure. Yeah, I think that would be the current existing big four, if that makes sense.
Awesome, man. It was great to talk to you again. Like I said, I've crossed paths with you many times. I know we've talked in the past, but it was nice to interview you.
Dude, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.